What a privilege it is to know a Father like this. We're just so blessed to have him, to be able to call him Abba Father, and we reverence him for that purpose. This morning, just a little bit of a thought, and I'm sure that everybody is well aware of all the stuff that's taking place in the world across the, even across our nation, that we're just experiencing so much turbulent time right now. It just amazes me that, what's taking place. But just a little bit of a thought that I've got for us today is following a stranger. You think about all the stuff that's taking place even in our cities and in our communities. This is kind of how that I am perceiving stuff that's taking place. We live in this day that anybody can start a protest. And more than likely, when you started one, I think we could go to Mount Vernon, a handful of us could this morning or today, and start marching down Main Street down through there, and you would look, and there would be people that would just blend right in with, just blend right in with it. And I don't think they would have a clue what the protest was even about. I perceive that this is what's taking place in the world today, that people is following after stuff that they don't even know. What are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? Where are we going with this? And I said, I perceive that it's evident everywhere that we look, that rioting and all the things that's taking place, but people is following this. I mean, somebody organizes a little gathering, and you look, and the streets fills up with people just to, and what enthusiastic passion that they would have to follow a stranger. On what are we doing here, basically? But following a stranger, you just think about what it is. But it's unfortunate, folks. But it's not just on the streets that we do this. But following this stranger also takes places in church congregations all across the country. Pastors and ministers gets up and proclaims things that is an absolute abomination to God. And people follow them. They come into the buildings and I guess be supportive or follow after a stranger. And you think about what it is that is taking place in this world today, even in the church world, that there's so many people that is hearing things that is contradictory to what this very Word of God says, and still yet they have a vast following. And following a stranger is my little bit of a thought that I'm going to share with you today, just a little bit. In the book of St. John, it talks about like this. And we know that we have got somebody that we need to follow. When Jesus began to call out his disciples, basically after he would have just a very short few words to share with them men that followed after him, his first bit of instructions was, follow me. And they began to follow after him. And I said they was blessed because he was providing the service that he had inquired of them to do. But you listen to what the 10th chapter of the book of St. John talks about today. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is as a thief and a robber. And this is talking about following that stranger. Following that stranger, that one that's trying to get into the sheepfold in any other option that he can possibly find that he's going to do. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and his sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger they will not follow. Their sheep know his voice. Back during this era of time, I mean, we're not that acquainted with having sheep, to be able to call them, but how many people has got a dog that you don't call it by name? When you call it and whistle at it or whatever it is, you call that name, and it recognizes that there's a connection there. And I said, this is Jesus talking in a parable, but it was also talking about shepherds that call their sheep by name. I live in a neighborhood back there that every once in a while, up on the hill up there, I hear my daughter-in-law hollering at her cows, and what does she do? She calls them all by name. And they begin to congregate into it. And I said, this is referring to something that we may not be able to connect with, but in our modern day, we call our animals by name. And this is talking about a shepherd that had sheep, and he individually placed a name upon each one of them. And Sister Hannah used to sing a song. He knows my name. When he begins to call my name, who am I supposed to follow? This stranger, it tells me, and when he puts forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And I do. When the Lord speaks, I recognize his voice. And he knows my name, and he calls me by name, and a stranger I will not follow, even though there's strangers out there that's trying to get us to congregate and join into what it is that is taking place in the world today. But I'm going to follow what this chief shepherd is trying his best to get me to do. What did he give me? He gave me the instructions to follow. He wrote it down in a book, and I am to follow what the guidelines of this book tells me to do. A stranger will they not follow, but this is what they'll do. They will flee from him, for they know not the voice of a stranger. But people is following after strangers today. The things that they're saying is contradictory to what the Word tells us to do, and still yet people is flocking after this thing. They don't even know the voice of who it is. I recognize the voice of the Lord. When he speaks to my heart, I can connect with this. That stranger, I can't. I don't know his voice, so I can't follow after what he was talking about. Stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they know not his voice of a stranger. And Jesus spoke this parable to them, and they didn't understand the things which he spoke to them. He began to speak things, and I said, Jesus Christ tried to simplify stuff to make it understandable, that you can relate to it, and what he done, basically, he gave a parable that sheep knows the master's voice, or the shepherd's voice, not the one that is taking care of them. They know that if they'll hear to that voice or adhere to that voice, that he'll take them sheep out into green pastures. He knows that if this sheep knows that if we'll listen to the voice of this shepherd, he'll take us to the still waters. We'll be able to live a successful life if we will heed to the voice of this shepherd that we have got under, that's given us the instructions. Then said Jesus unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, and he gave the example, or what it was. He said, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. We were sinners, folks. I'll just tell you, when Jesus Christ began to call our name and tried to bring us into the fold, we was all thieves and robbers. What does that basically mean? We was all sinners, because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We can relate to that. We can connect with what that was that he was talking about. Jesus said, I was the door of this sheepfold, and that this is how that we come into this thing. I am the door by many. If any man shall enter in, he shall be saved, shall go in and out and find pastures. But folks, we've got an adversary. That thief that he was referring to, listen to what he came for. The thief cometh not, but for to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And here's what the chief shepherd came for. He said, I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. And I'll just tell you, we have got the very promise that was made to us. This shepherd, this chief shepherd that we refer to so often, we listen to the voice that he speaks to us. to be kind, to be compassionate, show somebody that you care for them. This is that shepherd that's speaking to our heart, that's given us this counsel and this instructions, and a lot of times when we get agitated and things don't go the way that we want them to, that enemy begins to erupt himself inside of us and tries to make us bring this voice that this shepherd is trying to get across to us. He brings this into a different perspective, fire back at them, throw an insult back at them, do all this thing to them. This is what this enemy has come for. Jesus, he said, I've come that you can have the life. You can have a pleasant life. And we're so blessed that he came to do this. You can have it more abundantly. Jesus Christ himself says, I am the good shepherd. And the good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. We can everyone relate to what that was. We saw the example that he gave to greater love hath no man than this, than the man that would lay down his life for his friends. And Jesus Christ done this very thing. He was that shepherd that laid down his life simply because we was the sheep. And the good shepherd gives his life for us. We know that he did, folks. I'll just tell you, we looked to the Calvary's cross and realized what was happening he called him a lamb, but he actually was a shepherd of that lamb. And we're so thankful today that he's done this very thing for us. But here's what the Harlan does. That good shepherd lays his life down for the sheep. He stands in between it. But folks, it also gives another example about people that don't care that much for the sheep, but they're just into it for their own benefit or for their own acknowledgement, for their own gain. But this is what it said. He said, he that is a harlot and is not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth. And the wolf scattereth them, catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The harlot fleeth because he is a harlot, and careth not for the sheep. But Jesus said, I've come from a different perspective. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and have known of mine. Folks, the Lord knows us, I said, and we know him. We certainly do. That stranger that we was referring to earlier up on the passage, that we don't follow that stranger simply because of what it is that they're trying to get us to sway over into another way of life or into something that's not going to correspond with what the Word tells us to do. But this good shepherd, he said, I know my sheep and are known of mine. Father knoweth me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Here's a promise that was made to not only the Jews, but this came and incorporated us into this ability to be in this fold, and into the sheepfold. And we're recognized and acknowledged as sheep of the pasture that God is. And I said that was the illustration that was given to us. He said, I have other sheep that I have which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Jesus Christ became the sacrifice for all humanity. Whatever nationality that you are, whatever your gender, wherever that you're from, Jesus Christ became that one shepherd of the whole entire fold. The entire world has got the potential to get to God through Jesus Christ, and that's the only way. But I said that if you start following a stranger, we see this illustrated so many different times that there's many ways to get to God. I beg to differ with you. If you believe that, you're following after a stranger. Jesus said there is only one way that we're going to get to God, and that's going to be through Jesus Christ, through the very Son that sacrificed his life for us. And if you think that you can get to God just by doing any other thing that just being a good person, that people could convince you that you're going to be all right. You're a good man. You don't treat people bad. I'll just tell you, you're not going to get to God simply because of that. You're going to follow a stranger if you'll be convinced of that. But I'll just tell you, he told us that he had sheep that was of one fold, one shepherd. Therefore doeth my Father love me, because I laid down my life, that I might take it up again. You think about what it was that was instructed to us about not following after the stranger. but flee from the voice of that stranger. To get away from it, don't let it have an impact on your life. You know, I was thinking, as probably one of the most frequent, common passages of Scripture that has ever been put into existence was, "The Lord is my shepherd." Every one of us, no doubt, can quote the 23rd Psalm about what it is. The psalmist David gave his own personal testimony about what it was, that he was, he was under the impression that I have got a shepherd that watches over me. We all have heard about the story about what it was in David, what his sacrifice that he made. He was watching over his father's sheep. It tells me in the Scriptures, and you can relate to how that this passage comes into existence, simply because he was telling the event about what had happened to him. I don't know that he publicly made this announcement or not, but when he came before the enemy, the greatest enemy that Israel ever confronted against, they were come up against Goliath, and he began to tell this story when he was telling Saul that this is what happened to me once. He said, let me give you just a little bit of highlight. Saul was saying, we don't want you to go out there and confront this large enemy of Israel, but he said, let me tell you about what an experience that I had. He said, I can tell you a story about, I was watching my father's sheep. He was the youngest of the boys that was there, and he said, I was watching over my father's sheep one time, and he said, what do you think that you would have done had this have happened to you? There was a lion came down off of the mountain and began to destroy and disperse my father's sheep. What do you think natural instincts would have told David to do? Get out of here, son. You're going to get killed. Run. Evacuate this place. Let the sheep take care of themselves. But what did the psalmist David say that he done? He said, I run in and took that lion and I slew that thing simply because it was getting ready to destroy my father's sheep. And this is the example that he was referring to about what pastors needs to do. When things come into a congregation and begins to want to scatter and disperse and destroy, what does that pastor need to do? He needs to run in instead of saying, this is too dangerous for me, I'm getting out of here. David said, I come in against that lion and I slew that thing and saved my father's sheep. They did not get destroyed because of what it was. I was not a harlot. I was caring for the master, for my dad's sheep. And this is the responsibility that I had. Told this to Saul. And he said, if you don't believe that one, let me tell you another one. He said, I was watching them again. Here come a bear down out of the woods or wherever that it came from, and right into the midst of the sheep that he began to run in, and they was scared, they panicked, and they was doing all sorts of things. He said, let me tell you what I done. I ran in and saved them sheep simply because I overthrew the bear. And he said, now then, this uncircumcised Philistine that's here, I'm going to use that same experience that I used on my father's sheep. And he said, they're trying to destroy Israel. This giant, this thing is coming against us, and he's trying to destroy us. And he said, I'll just tell you, that God that took care of me when I was fighting the lion, that same God that took care of me when I was fighting against this bear, he said he's going to save not only me, but he's going to save Israel. This battle is going to be won today simply because God is going to be there with us, and I've got the boldness and the ability that God has given me to stand up against it. And he said, the Lord is my shepherd. He said, I was watching over Dad's sheep, but he said, the Lord watches over me. Folks, if ever there was a need today for us to have a shepherd to watch over us, it's the day that we're living in. So if we can make the same statement, the same proclamation that the psalmist David said, that anything that comes my way, I can stand up against it because the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd today. I want to have that same statement in my life, that the Lord is my shepherd also, folks. and He still watches over me. He still watches over me, and I'm so thankful for that today. So today, if the Lord is not your shepherd, I'm going to give you an opportunity right now to make arrangements to get inside the fold. We're going to give you an opportunity, and if you will stand across the house, we're going to give you an opportunity that you can come and let the Lord be your shepherd, and He can watch over things that's taking place in their life. So if you will, come to the altar. Let that Lord be your shepherd to protect us in a time like we have never experienced in our generations as far as I can remember back. But you think about what it is. Folks, do not follow a stranger. I encourage you to make sure that you know the voice of the Lord when He speaks to you. Come to the altar today. Let's pray.